Welcome back to the Lanterne Rouge Cycling Podcast for the World Championships finale, the Women's Elite Road Race around the Glasgow circuit, the same circuit that the men did last weekend, which feels like a long time ago. We've had Matthew van der Poel crashing in the mountain bike cross-country race yesterday, which I actually did watch. I thought I'd broaden my horizons, but today we're about this race, 156 Ks from Loch Lomond. They do Crow Road in the first 30 Ks. That's the longest climb of the race, 5 Ks at 4%, 4.5%. Then that 5 laps of that Glasgow technical circuit. No rain today was forecast for the last hour and a half. Didn't eventuate. And the main climbs on that circuit are Montrose Street, 200 meters at about 4%, and there's one called George, I think, which is pretty punchy. But there was more news. Sickness, Benji.
Yeah, we had sickness, the likes of Niewiadoma for Poland out, and Dygert also out. So the entire Canyon camp was kind of devoured at this race, which is a real shame for the race because those were two riders that would likely have played a role in the final of this race, especially with the form they've been showing recently. And I would have loved to see Niewiadoma on this parkour. He's kind of the Lippert style rider. So those are out, and the peloton for the rest kind of stayed in similar fashion as we ventured to the start of today's race. And what I found intriguing before this race, we said it in the preview, was what would happen with the breakaway, which teams would try to be involved, how Belgium and the Netherlands would respond to that, and that is something that immediately popped up the second the race started because we had a rather strong breakaway. Blanka Vash, I think she was the one that actually orchestrated the entire event of the breakaway. She made the first attack. The likes of Labou following, Lizzie Deignan, Ashley Molman, and then the response of Belgium and the Netherlands was sending Sanne Kans and Misha Bredewold into that attack, next to Elise Chabbey, already attacking in the first breakaway, and will eventually play a very big role in this race. But that breakaway, what did you think of the response of the Netherlands and Belgium?
It reminded me of the Tour of Flanders breakaway where it was just Van Hooijdonk in it for Jumbo-Visma. And with like Mads Pedersen, Kasper Asger, and all these hitters, it's like, it's great Bredewold's in there and Sanne Kant's in there, but, well, they're not going to win if this break gets too much of a leash. So it's a gamble. It's a gamble from Netherlands and Belgium that some other team, not Switzerland, not France, South Africa's Molman's their main rider, but some other team will do that work and close it for them. And if they don't, that's what I wanted to wonder. What if that gap went to 2 minutes, 2.5 minutes? Yeah. I wanted to see eventually the Belgium and Netherlands blink. Because that break is super strong. Like Deignan, controversial Lizzie Deignan, like she has been back in good shape this year, like lots of podium positions actually in serious races, but she can turn it on for the World Championships or the big races. And Moolman and Labou, like they're riders that can top 10 this race, Labou in particular. So I thought it was a gamble.
Especially with that moves ahead, and then the Crow Road is coming up. So the bigger climate is in this race, which is very early in the race. So whether that's going to have a major effect on the race, not sure, but it could have is, for example, if a Labou and the likes of a Molman push on that climb, then that break will get more of a gap on the chasers behind. But it was actually Italy, because they were not involved in that breakaway. Germany also wasn't involved, but it was initially Italy that started chasing before Crow Road, and on Crow Road they actually tried to bridge with Soraya Paladin, and that bridge kind of was a bit of a chasse patate, let's be honest about it. So she was stuck in between, and eventually she got caught because the Germans started pacing behind, and the Germans are doing that for Liana Lippert, who initially tried to follow the Paladin move, but then decided not to and just had her team pace. And this is where I do want to rant for 1 second about the U23 thing. So it's still the case that the U23 world champion is being handed their jersey as a consequence of who of the first U23 rider in this race. In 2025, I think it's going to be a separate race. And this is the example now. Germany's riding with Niedermayer, who is one of the riders that could win that U23 world champion, but instead is working for the team, while a Blanka Vash, who was in that breakaway, can ride for her own. So that's the unfairness of that aspect. But anyway, back to the race. Vash gets dropped from that breakaway, and the Germans are kind of bailing out Belgium and the Netherlands, right? Even though I feel like the Netherlands situation is better than Belgium, because Sanne Kant is not necessarily the best option there.
Yeah, I think it was an okay gamble. I think if you had Paladin in there, and Italy wouldn't help, or if you had another team in there, the sort of from the minor teams or second tier teams, then you got a problem. Like if Poland were in there, say Nuviadome was behind and they got Skalniak Sojka in, then you might have a big problem. But yeah, I think Bauernfeind and Niedermeyer, they're going to be best on their on the climb, and so Lippert using them, even though it's so early. Yeah, it doesn't seem too bad to me, because how useful can those really small climbers be on this punchy circuit? I think it's better for Lippert that they just close it down. And anyway, the break actually gets brought back. I thought this was really dangerous. Blankovac, as he said, was dropped, but she'd actually, Daniel Rev was ribbing me before the race, the Eurosport Hungary commentator, saying I besmirched Blankovac's name. She has actually had better results than I gave her credit for this season. She got dropped, but she actually came back a little bit later in the race for that U23 medal, I believe. Anyway, we get onto the circuits. It really calmed down after Crow Road. Breakaway kind of gave itself up. They realized the chase was so strong that they're like, oh, we'll just give it up. even like one of them, Mulman or someone, or Lebu, like went back to the peloton, and I think Lebu punctured. So it's all back together. It's pretty much chills for maybe half an hour, Benji.
Yeah, it is kind of, well, chills is a big thing, because behind there were riders that dropped on Crow Road, the likes of Vos, Van Androoy, and Persico, that were still coming back, and they did in those first few moments on that circuit, but there were still moves happening in that peloton once those circuits started rolling up. And this is where the intrigue of tactical group dynamics comes into play, because how is Netherlands going to react to groups forming? Are they going to put some rider in it? Stuff like that. How is Belgium going to respond to that? Will they have the riders to do it? Because on paper, their team is not the almighty powerful team like the Netherlands is on paper. And the first attacks were once again the likes of Shabby. Shabby once again very active together with the likes of Kopecky responding already with 92 kilometers to go. Henderson, who was really strong in this race, also right on it. Lippert, Vollering, Persico, Brown. And what was clear is that Vollering was just responding to Kopecky at this point in the race. And we saw Wibbes dropping off the bag, Bredewold having a mechanical. So the Dutch team was kind of becoming weaker throughout the first few phases, partially because some riders weren't good enough, partially because of mechanical issues. But the entire group behind came back again. But then the next attack comes, and there was an attack by Reusser and Henderson. We didn't see the attack because the TV direction in this race has been absolutely brutal, and I just had to mention that. Like, they're missing so many active moments. They're showing the back of the race. They're showing injured riders by the side of the road for 3 minutes straight. It was kind of shameful, but that Reusser and Henderson attack, I feel like that led to a bit of a stretching out of the groups, right? Because I swear there was a group 2 then with Paladin, Shabby, Skalniak, Sojka, Marcus, and Ludwig, and then group 3 was kind of up to Belgium to fix.
Yeah, Kopecky already with 80, plus Ks to go, over 2 hours to go. She's having to work and monitor groups and never switch off because, Switzerland, super aggressive with Shabby and Reusser. I think they actually rode quite a good race today, or very good race, actually. And even the Netherlands are playing a little bit where they're like, okay, we'll put Marcus in that move. She's not going to beat Uttrup, Ludwig, Shabby, or Paladin, probably, but she's up there. We're represented, so Kopecky's forced to do something. So I think they were, and this is where sort of the hero of the day comes in, Benji, which is, and I'll let you pronounce her name, but as we said in the preview, the Belgian team is a little bit stronger than it maybe looks on paper compared to previous years, with Van der Velde, Troyen, and the star of the day in a domestique role, Justine, I'll try it, Hekere?
Pretty close, actually. Justine Hekere. She was really strong in this race. Yeah, you basically got it, roughly. 90% there. We'll get you to there. In a month, you'll be an expert Belgian. But Van der Velde did some work early on. I feel like the real star in Belgium, like you said, was Justine Hekere, because she truly worked a lot. And this was one of those moments. We mentioned it. Kopecky was doing some work, but they quickly switched to Hekere going to the front and starting to pace again. And she actually closes that gap. And then we get another move. Henderson attacking. This is an interesting one to me because Kopecky actually counters with Persico in the wheel. And I was like, why is nobody else in this wheel? Where's Vollering? Where's everybody else? And Kopecky looks over and we eventually do see Marcus pacing the group behind, and there's not a major gap there. And I think Kopecky realized that there was no clear separation there, and that's why she stops that move. But at this point, I feel like she's riding a very similar race to how Van der Poel was doing in the men's race. No, because he was also pretty active at 75k to go, seeing...
It's eerie how similar they are. It's actually eerie. Like, with about 2 hours left, they do one big testing attack. Don't fully commit to it. See who's with them. See who will work with them. Stop. And then Kopecky kind of uses her teammates, lets the race play out then for another hour after that. It's actually really similar how they rode this race. Probably actually Kopecky even more impressive at the end, managing the groups, frankly, because she was the A1 favorite before this race. And yeah, it was also unclear to me, like a lot of riders in this race, you'd see them get dropped, like in trouble, like AVV or like Blancavache. And you say, oh, they're done. They're done for the day. And they'd come back and play a role an hour later. And it's almost like some riders, AVV in particular, areas of this circuit really did not suit her. And so if an attack went and a split was formed just after a punchy hill, for example, she would have to then spend another half lap coming all the way back. And so she wasn't completely cooked. It's just this circuit really benefited some riders and parts of it more than... And I'd say, like, Roycer didn't really suit her, this circuit, and AVV. But, you know, they're strong. They come back. They play a role later. But then Shabby eventually... Hakira does her best shutting everything down. Eventually, Shabby gets away, Benji.
Yep.
And at one point, big gap, 130. Hakira's gone. Whose responsibility is this now? Because Netherlands weren't just putting Marcus on the front to close it down.
Exactly, and they also had issues at that point. I feel like it was a very similar moment when Shabby went to the moment a few kilometers later, roughly 5k later, where the likes of AVV had a loose front wheel. You don't often see that in cycling, that a wheel is loose. Sometimes we seen a dude, was it in the junior race, where he was trying to get his wheel locked up again while he was cycling? That was insane. Fortunately for AVV, she chose a safer option, stop, but the mechanic actually gave her a front wheel instead of giving her a new bike, and then she had to stop again a few minutes later and then had a proper bike change. But regardless of that, I'll skip forward. She actually comes back to the group again. So that's what you're saying, not just the bad moments, but also the mechanical moments where you're like, oh, she's out of it. There's no way she can come back from this. But then she comes back because on one end, Shabby's going hard at the front, but Group 2's dynamic is also kind of looking at each other, because Hikiera was still doing quite a bit of work, but at a certain point, once the gap was 30 seconds, 40 seconds, it started really being a moment of, okay, Hikiera, stop the work, let's see if another country takes control, and that's when you say it went up to 125, 130, and there were attacks behind. There were moves behind, and I was thinking maybe Italy's going to start pacing because still 5 riders here. Maybe Netherlands will blink at some point because still 4 riders here. And it didn't really feel like that was initially the case until we got a switch. We got a switch at a certain point. Got to remind myself at what point it was. I feel like there was an attack of AVV after her return where Hikier was closing that. And a bit later, after the attack failed, AVV started folding into a domestique role together with the likes of Van Androoy, together with the likes of Marcus, Hikiera, and together with Paladin. And that's the moment, to me, was roughly 40 kilometers to go, where we truly saw that, yeah, this is the moment where collaboration is happening, right?
Yeah, Netherlands were like, well, there's no bluff to call with Belgium, like we either chase or do something, because Marcus had tried, Shaspatatted, and so AVV did start pacing, but then she attacked as well. Yep. Then there was an attack a few kilometers later when the gap had come down a little bit. It was a little bit strange. Yep. And that puts a lot of pressure on Kopecky, because Vollering's in Kopecky's wheel, Persico's with AVV. She'd probably work with AVV, to be honest. And Kopecky's having to, with maybe, 14, can I do maths? 2.5 laps left. She's getting rolled by the Netherlands. Well, Vollering doesn't immediately counter, but AVV is putting her under pressure. There's then a strange attack, I think, from Roycer on one of the climbs, and then that stops. Yeah. I thought that was a little bit odd, but
I think the vital moment that we're missing out right now is there was an AVV attack with roughly 33 kilometers to go where Kopecky responds by counter-attacking her. It was on that. There's this moment on the circuit where they're kind of like going into like a twisty narrow bit that goes slightly uphill that we've seen lots of attacks on during the Glasgow World Championships. And that's where AVV went with the likes of Persico. And Kopecky and Vollering kind of bridge to that, but Kopecky keeps going. And that's the moment where Kopecky and Vollering actually have a gap on the others for a bit. And Vollering was not working properly with Kopecky. She took over a tiny bit, but kind of that pacing thing, knowing that Van Vleuten's behind. And I do feel like, looking at this race so far, including this moment, that Vollering and Van Vleuten were actually working together quite well. It's shocking. I didn't expect to say that. Don't you agree?
Yeah, they were like playing off each other really well, and the lack of that in the final lap I think would be important eventually. But yeah, they actually, the way AVV, I think, sacrificed herself, she knew that she probably couldn't win, and the only way she could win was to go with these sacrificial attacks and maybe hope there's a complete stuff up in the chase behind. She's not going to win a sprint. So yeah, I think they did work really, really well together. And I was thinking, is Kopecky going to... Attack is the best form of defense. How long can she have attacks rolled on her? It's not just going to be the Netherlands team. We've got a very reduced group now. Shabby just ahead. Maybe she's like, she dangles. The gap's down to maybe 20 seconds. And it's like one attack plus two riders working for a little bit is going to bring her back. So they know that they can see her on some of the straights. And the group is down to Vollering with her teammate Van Vleuten, Kopecky on her own, Cecilie Uttrup Ludwig from Denmark, Reusser with her teammate Shabby ahead, Dijkman, who was in the early days breakaway, and she's made this group, and she's actually working a fair bit, and Schweinberger from Austria, who came third in the time trial. I don't think I'm missing anybody. And to be honest, apart from, there's then a phase of about 3/4 of a lap, maybe a full lap even, where Vollering doesn't go again after the AVV initial attack. Vollering doesn't go. Maybe one burst on one climb. Dijkman rolls through. Ludwig accelerates on a couple of punches. Everyone follows her. Schweinberger's pulling. Kopecky's rolling through. The cooperation for a lap or so was not bad.
I feel like there was also an odd portion of that lap that felt like it was the majority cooperating, with some attacks by Kopecky like strolled over it. Like she tried on this hill a tiny bit, she tried there a tiny bit, but somehow they kept cooperating despite Kopecky subtly keeping up attacks every now and then, which I found that intriguing. And we really are coming to the moment where when those Kopecky moves aren't really getting separation, that you're starting to wonder, okay, who's gonna make the separation attack here? Because can Kopecky drop everybody? She looked strong so far. She was attacking every left and right section. But is Vollering going to attack at some point? Is Eliko van Vleuten going to attack at some point? And I swear there was an attack somewhere at this moment where Van Vleuten was kind of ahead for a bit, right? And the group had to kind of work their way back, Vollering not cooperating in that sense. And once Van Vleuten was caught again, we came to 16 kilometers to go, where we saw a rather brutal attack by the other Dutch woman, right?
Yeah, Vollering goes really hard. Kopecky had been bluffing. I think those two had been sitting at the back of the group a lot, just looking at each other, eyeballing each other. And even, the group was kind of stalling because Shabby was pretty cooked. Like, Shabby was really tired, and they were just holding the gap at 16 seconds to her. And big attack from Vollering. Kopecky's attacks, I think, had been really, before then, quite smart, because she hadn't attacked on the climbs. She went in weird places, in like feed zones, on the flat, and forcing Vollering to close her on the flat, I think, hurts Vollering more than attacking her on a climb, where maybe Vollering, she got the watts per kilo advantage on longer climbs, obviously. But brings her back. Kopecky was never out of the wheel, frankly. Don't cooperate. Shabby's caught through that action. Get to the final lap. Everyone's rolling through, and like the default is you can't go the line with Kopecky for a sprint. If you're Kopecky, there's no way you think you're going to be able to keep it together for a sprint. And so we're probably expecting a solo winner. Schweinberger had looked really, really strong. She was like going with moves of Ludwig on punchy climbs. I was wondering when she was going to counter. I was also the Reusser Benji. I thought she'd go straight away when Shabby was caught. She's been sitting on for, over an hour. But they go through the finish line, and there's an AVV mechanical. How much do you think that changed this final lap?
I'll be honest, I think a lot of people will be mentioning it as a very big change for this final lap. But Van Vleuten had been actually off the back quite a few times on the last Montrose Street. She was 5 meters off the back, she was dropping, and she only came back because the others started looking at each other. So it could have influenced, it could have given like a 1-2 rolling attack, but I don't think she would have been strong enough to make a decisive change to the outcome of this race at all.
Probably not. I mean, they did stall afterwards, so maybe she could have attacked again, but when we see what eventually happens, which is an attack from Dijkman and Schweinberger, no one, Kopecky and Vollering, eyeballing each other. Just looking at each other, looking at each other, looking at each other. They get to a flatter section. Royce bridges across. She gets separation. Still Kopecky and Vollering looking at each other. And then Kopecky launches super hard, gets separation, gets across to Royce. Those two start working together to close down Dijkman and Schweinberger. It looks like Vollering's completely cooked. Yeah. And she actually starts to crawl her way back bit by bit to that group of four in front. I thought Ludwig and Vollering were, and Shabby I think was probably maybe still there with them. Yeah. I thought they were out of the medals, and she does the Undertaker meme.
Yeah, say it. I want to hear it. Call the ambulance.
Oh, but not for me.
Exactly. That's exactly what it felt like, because she was straight up dropped. Kopecky ate her plate completely and then launched herself afterwards. And Vollering looked really, really demotivated when that happened, because you kind of want to feel demotivated when stuff like that happens. But like you said, she crawls back and she gives a brutal attack on that hill. And she does that passing the group that she's bridging towards. Kopecky relatively easily gets on her wheel, won't lie about that. So I wasn't necessarily seeing that attack as a danger towards Kopecky in that moment at all, but some other riders are getting in trouble, and I feel like Uttrup Ludwig was looking good at this point. Reusser, these hills aren't her favorite, so I feel like, yes, we might have waited for a Reusser attack at some point, but I think the hills might have prevented her from attacking after these climbs to begin with. So I think that's the reason that we didn't see the all-out Reusser attack either. And I do feel like in the last 50 kilometers that we've discussed so far, we've seen a lot of SD Worx civil war going on. As in, they straight up rode for their country. I can't point to a specific moment where a rider from SD Worx was riding for the other rider clearly. Like, to me, it felt like they were all riding for their country, not for the trade teams, which I like seeing in the World Championships, and sometimes you don't see that in the men's side, but here they were clearly doing that, in my opinion.
So just like normal when they're on their trade team. What changed?
Okay, let's continue the explanation here, because we're now at, what is it, 9 kilometers to go in this race, and we're kind of waiting for a move again, right? Because all these attacks have kind of come back together. I don't think Shabby was still in the picture at this point. I think she was the actual victim of the move there. But with 7k to go, we get an attack by Cecilie Uttrup Ludwig, and it was a really good timing, I found. And Dijkman's the one that tries to close, but it's once again in that very narrow, twisty moment, and that's when Kopecky makes a big move towards Uttrup Ludwig, right?
Kopecky attacks again. It's not that steep a climb, gets good separation, and this looks like the one. There's not much time to claw her back at all, and also the final run in the final 2Ks, that downhill is very fast and technical. You're not going to gain much time back following on someone like Kopecky, and yeah, Kopecky gets to Ludwig. They're together. Vollering looks gone again. She is gone this time. She's with Reusser. Those two are sort of working together. Schweinberger and Dijkman are out of the picture. And Kopecky and Ludwig, they get into the next little climb. Well, before then, and Ludwig goes to the front, and she starts working. Or does one pull. Maybe she just wants to enter the climb in front. She then attacks Kopecky on the climb, the last major climb, and the second last major climb, and Kopecky just straight up counters her and drops her. So I was kind of surprised to see her doing that. I thought, I mean, yes and no. Like, she's probably thinking, well, I can't go to the sprint with her if I want to win, so I need to drop her. But then maybe she could wait longer, and then Kopecky, I don't know. So she tried. Kopecky was way too strong. She drops her. She goes clear. She descends safely. And she rides away to win the World Championships for Belgium and for herself with a good team performance from the team they brought, getting in the early breakaway and Kakira doing all that domestique work. Kopecky managed the Netherlands and the other group pretty well. She knew where she was strongest and she was the strongest. She was the favourite and she delivered, which is a hard thing to do in a big race like this, and wins 7 seconds ahead of Vollering, who actually just caught Ludwig on the line. And Ludwig came third for the bronze medal. Royce fourth, Schweinberger fifth after a third in the road race. Revelation of this world champs. Dijkman sixth, Shabby seventh. Van Vleuten after the mech was kind of out of it. She came eighth, then Marcus. So 3 Netherlands in the top 10. Garcia 10th, and Blankovac in 11th takes the U23 title after being in the early breakaway as well.
What a race, man. Honestly, this is one of those races where I felt like from start to finish, I wasn't bored for a second. Like, even with the breakaway formation stuff, the breakaway being caught at some point, there was no real moment where I was like super bored or anything. So this circuit is really delivering in that sense. But Kopecky, what has she won this year already? She's won quite a bit of races, and it started early on with the likes of Omloop, then Nokere Koersen, not the biggest races yet. Omloop is World Tour this year, but I still don't qualify that. The likes of a Ronde van Vlaanderen, for example, which she also won this year. She ended up not winning Roubaix, which I think she was straight up the favorite for. I still believe that SD Worx kind of bottled the break formation there, and that's how they ended up losing that with Kopecky. But she kept up the winning ways in, most importantly, the Tour de France Femme. As in, she won the first stage, yellow jersey, green jersey afterwards, very close positions. She could have won more stages there than she won. But now the World Championships added on to that, and it's a 1-2 for SD Worx again.
I know, and it could have been. They take the U23 title as well, and Royce nearly came third. She was fourth, so not a bad day for SD Worx. Maybe it was, because Kopecky won on the SL7 S-Works tarmac. So Specialized, just a big announcement last week was they released, obviously not a plug, because they just released a new SL8, and apparently it's like 1,000,000 times quicker and it's the best bike ever. But Vollering was on the new SL8, according to the images Eagle Eye Luke saw, and Kopecky's on the old, only good for landfill SL7, and she somehow won Worlds. So is that, I don't know what the marketing message is from that. Maybe if I'm on the SL8, I could win. But yeah, that was funny. It was kind of a nerdy thing. But yeah, Kopecky's just too good. Like, it is. Yeah. She's the best one-day rider in the world, has been this year. Like, what'd she win? Tour of Flanders, as you said, should have won Roubaix. Omloop. Yeah, just the best classics rider, and you still have to deliver it. You still have to avoid trouble.
Yeah.
And Netherlands, I thought, rode a good race too. Actually, one of their best races they've put together. I thought they rode a really good race. So it's not like Netherlands just had a major fuck up and handed it to Kopecky either. And Switzerland was super strong as a secondary team too. It was a shame without Nivea Doma. I would have loved to have seen Poland with. I think there would have been more likely to see trade team shenanigans.
Yeah.
With the Canyon riders. I don't think Nivea Doma is going to pull behind Shabby.
Okay. Interesting.
I
enjoy that take. We'll never know, I'm afraid. Maybe next year we can see it on the next World Championships.
And tactically, she probably shouldn't. Like, with Kopecky in the group.
Yeah, exactly. And that's also the thing with these other riders. Like Schweinberger, for example, she actually worked quite a bit in that group, even though she shouldn't necessarily work all the time in that group either. She's one of those riders that really performed really well, and she's one of those solo riders in a group. So I really believe that this parcours was technical, but also so attritional that the strongest rider straight up ended flowing towards the top of the leaderboard. And we see that in both the men's race and the women's race, where you can have a good team. Belgium in the men's race had the strongest team on paper. Netherlands didn't have a shit team there. When it comes to this team right here, Belgium's team was good enough to try and control some moves into the last 30 kilometers with Ricciardo, which is golden value. But it's also not the team on paper that is Netherlands is, but with the team as Netherlands, the only thing you can do is try and roll attacks, and they did do that. They tried to move with Marcus, with Van Vleuten, with multiple riders, Bredewold in the early breakaway. So they did try to get ahead of things. Is there anything you see that they could have done differently to keep Kopecky behind?
Well, I mean, I don't know, getting the early breakaway with a stronger rider, but then
there's only the one move that Requiere stopped where 2 Swiss riders were there and 2 Dutch riders were there, Marcus and I don't remember who the other one was. That's the only move I see that maybe if they collaborated better, that he could have stayed away. Because only Requiere was pacing that down. And on paper, 7 riders should be able to outpace Requiere. So that's the only part of this race where I'm like, they could have done better there.
Yeah, I think it's tough because in the end, those riders get completely cooked and like lose, lose a lot of time and 10 minutes. So with these circuits, it's almost like Kopecki's so good she can, unless they're on the level of Shabby, who's a top sort of Ardennes rider.
Yeah.
Like she came 5th in Liège and she still got caught by Kopecky attacking all the time, and Kopecky then put a minute and a half into her. So yeah, Kopecky's just too good. That's sometimes the way it is. And doesn't mean she wins every race like Tour of Flanders or Strade Bianche when Vollering outsprinted her at the finish.
Tour of Flanders?
Roubaix.
Okay.
Slightly different race.
Almost got a heart attack.
Yeah, same cobbles. Apparently,
get out of here.
Apparently, these aren't cobbles. So Riva told me these are not cobbles. They're called sets, I think, because cobbles is just a random stone your man finds that looks roughly the right shape, and he just puts it in the ground. That's a cobble, apparently.
Welcome to Flanders.
A set is a stone that's like the right dimensions, and it's all neatly put together, so it's not as rough and bad. So they are not cobbles. You are correct. They are measly sets, and I don't know if the Romans put them there. Perhaps they did.
The Romans with the sets, instead of the cobbles.
Yeah. World Champs is over, Benji. How does it feel?
I can't believe it.
You are Belgian world champion in both the men's elite TT, women's road race. Belgium,
I don't think we can complain.
Yeah.
And Van der Poel's basically Belgian anyway, so I'm claiming that as well. That's controversial.
Yeah. And what else in the women's TT? Who won that? Dygert won that. Yeah, as you said, it was a shame not to see her line up. I don't think she would have been suited to this course at all with the handling.
Mm-hmm.
And that's my quick fire recap. Who won the men's TT? Remco and then Van der Poel. You already said
the men's TT.
Well, it's like a week. It's so different. What do you think of that? That reminds me because I've forgot. What do you think of the format?
Order is so annoying. As in, like this. So, I reckon having the men's race before the time trial is good for the time trial because people won't skip the time trial for the men's race. The problem is that Ghana then skips the road race for the time trial. But on the opposite end, there might be some riders. The mixed relay is annoying.
Half a road rider half the year.
The mixed relay should be the last thing so that people don't risk anything before their big goal. Just put that at the end. If you want to have it, put it at the end. Nobody else really cares about it anyway. There's like 2-3 countries that care about it. So just put it at the end so that they can have their fun. The rest of us just want to see the best riders in the road race and in the time trial, both men and women in those races. It's annoying to me that one road race is before the time trials and the other one is after the time trials. That is annoying, but I guess that's a consequence of the Tour de France Femmes being so close to the World Championships that they put the road race of the women at the end. But I don't know. I don't. Yes, I saw a few.
It must affect spectators, right? Because if you want to go to see both road races, that's very expensive. If you're traveling from Europe, if you want to stay for the full amount of time,
and
maybe it's the domestic crowd is great because they can have it over 2 weekends. I don't know.
TV wise, I think for a regular viewer, like we need to like work around the sport as well. So we skip a few disciplines as a consequence because we can't cover it all. But if you're a regular viewer with like a week off, you can watch every single discipline in a row and you get to know more disciplines like that bloody discipline with the German and the Swiss cyclists playing football on bicycles.
That's pretty
I didn't know that existed until this week.
Really?
Yeah, I didn't know that existed.
No, that one's good.
That's fucking glorious.
Probably a more serious event than the mockery the UCI tried to make of the cross-country mountain bike.
That's a long discussion, my friend.
Well, not really. It's a short discussion. They wanted Van der Poel to win or podium.
Yeah.
So they changed the rules the day before so he could move up on the... You start in grids or whatever, or in the grid. It's like qualifying position in F1, the better position you start, the better for you in the race.
I've got a solution.
You get your grid position from previous events. He had no, so he should have started the back. Pidcock did a few events, so he should have started 7th row or something. Pidcock came out in solidarity with the other riders who had got the qualification points after he won the World Championships.
After he benefited from the rule, he came out to say that. But
yeah.
it's still good that he says it, but he could have done it before the race, and he could have in solidarity started from the 7th row as well, to be honest. I would have loved seeing if he could win from that position.
He would have still won. He's too good.
Yeah, but he probably is. But I will say, how about looking at F1? Why don't they do like a qualifying time trial across that course to qualify your grid
That should be the
position?
short track. The short track.
I have no clue what short track means.
It's the one Gaze one. The shorter track. It's a shorter track.
Really? No shit.
Yeah, it's a short track. Listen, I just watched my first mountain bike events this week. I'm learning fast. You ready for the mountain bike podcast? Yeah, exactly. I'm an expert.
I just saw Vanderpool crash out. That's the only thing I saw from this race.
That's what I know. My analysis is that he should probably stop doing that event if he wants to not injure himself. He crashed in the first corner just about. He's lucky he didn't seem to hurt himself too badly, but the crash in Tokyo seemed to take him out for a while. But anyway, yeah, the World Championships, it was good. I think there's a lot of talk about the circuit being very dangerous. It ended up in the road race. Crashes were few and far between. Now, maybe if it had rained heavily, it would have been carnage.
Yeah.
Could have been, but it didn't. I don't think there were any more crashes than I would normally expect across the road races, frankly.
It was not outrageous either. I feel like it made for a good entertainment, and it was the kind of circuit. They won't have this every single year. So having it once every like 5 to 10 years, where there's a circuit like this, where you have a circuit that truly makes the best rider win, I like that.
Yeah, I think it tests handling, it tests punch, it tests descending, technical skills. I think it was a pretty good circuit in both races. All races were pretty exciting. There was definitely heavy Group 2 dynamics, particularly in the men's under 23 road race. That last couple laps were virtually unwatchable.
Yeah.
That was really bad, but I think, would you like to see a pure sprinters course? Like, in fairness to the sprinters, yes. But would it be as exciting as this? No.
No.
Unless there's crosswind action. So then you got to have it in the Middle East, which for the money of the sport, they probably would enjoy the UCI. Aren't they doing it? Yeah.
In 2 years?
Abu Dhabi, maybe. In I don't know. Or you have, but they like having these punchy courses where all the superstars can participate and potentially win. And it's actually the pure climbers, since Tokyo and maybe Bergen, don't get much of a look in. But what is a pure climber when Pogacar is Pogacar, Anyway, that was World Championships. Very strange for it to be done in August. We have the Vuelta Burgos starting this week. Enric Mas is not doing it, but Roglic, I believe, is on the provisional start list on PCS. Ooh. So that's a decent enough race. We've got Lagunas de Naya, the mountaintop finish, the solitary one in that race. Also Caruso and Buitrago there. Not the strongest start list. Race. Maybe. I don't know who's doing it for UAE. They'll probably send a pretty good team. They normally do. Yep. But that's the tune-up for the Vuelta. We'll have the Vuelta preview later before we go to Barcelona, and we're going to try and interview a few riders in the upcoming week, maybe even a special guest, but no promises. Yeah, bit of a teaser there. I don't have to wear this hat anymore.
No. You have to. Sorry. It's for if someone becomes world champion, they have to wear the jersey the entire year, so you're forced to wear that hat for an entire year.
It's so hot. It's actually really, really hot. I'm going to wear it in winter, actually. It'll be useful. But anyway, thanks for listening throughout our World Championships coverage. Hope you enjoyed it, and we'll see you maybe with some interviews this week. Until then, ciao.